I hope that all of you are really well. It's a pleasure tonight to introduce all of you about not only the topic, but I'm going to introduce about all the participants as well. Tonight, we are going to talk something really important that is called mental health for LGBTQ entrepreneurs, especially, but as well so for founders, for people who work for companies, but in general, I'm going to ask few questions to the participants as well. The name of the people tonight with me are Danny and Sueto. And I would like that each one of us, especially, can introduce us, Chris Rollins, Gabriel, Chris Wang, and Tim Colohan. I would like each one of us, if we can introduce for who you are, what do you do, and what is the main reason you are tonight with all of us. Tonight, because I'm in London right now, so for you, I think it's day. So, Chris, can you please introduce you? Thank you.
I'll go for that. There's two of us. Thank you
So
so much, Fabio, and thank you all for being here. It's very nice to meet you. I'm Chris Rollins. I'm an executive coach and leadership consultant and speaker, and I work mostly with small and medium-sized tech companies focused on leader development, employee engagement, cultural transformation, and I work also a lot one-on-one with LGBTQ+ leaders. As a former head of people, openly gay, my heart is really with working with the LGBTQ+ community. I also founded Queer HR. It's an online community dedicated to LGBTQ+ people in the HR, people space, DEI space, who are really coming together to inspire each other to bring more humanity into the workplace. So that's a bit about me, and I'm here because I love working with this community and giving back.
Thank you so much, Chris. This is amazing. So please, Chris, can you, Gabriel, can you introduce yourself and tell us more about who you are and why you're tonight, please? Thank you.
All right, I'll take that. So I'm Gabriel Cooper. I'm a psychotherapist, and I work specifically with queer folks, and some of my specialties are anxiety and chronic illness. I think mental health is extremely important and has been a topic of a lot of interest and even more focus and more importance as we've transitioned over the past year and a half, and especially in the workplace. And I help a lot of my clients as well as other companies help navigate that and integrate mental health into their own missions and priorities.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. And now, can you please, Chris Wang, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be on this panel. I am Chris. I am the co-founder of Shimmer. We are an early stage startup, and we offer one-on-one ADHD coaching for adults. For me specifically, I am queer, I am neurodivergent, I have an ADHD diagnosis, and those things, along with, I guess, also being Asian, different aspects of my identity have guided a lot of what I do, and that's part of the reason why I'm here. Another part of the reason I'm here, I think why I was invited, is to speak from my personal experience, since every person here on the panel is probably a lot more educated about the topic than I am. So I can talk a lot about, I guess, what it's like to work at and found an early stage startup that can be extremely stressful, going through pivots, dealing with rejection, dealing with everything that comes with a startup. So that is what I like to talk about. I like to talk about being a founder, like not just what works, but also kind of the ugly that nobody really talks about. I think it's really important, and it's something that's often skated underneath the rug. So that is how, I guess, what I can talk about today. But I'm also just super excited to hear from everyone else here. The lineup is pretty amazing. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. And now it's the time for Tim. Tim, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Tim Colohan. It's a real privilege to be here. This is a remarkable team. I've been a Zen meditation teacher for 35 years. At the same time, was 30 years in the set decoration, production and film industry. So I worked freelance as a set decorator roughly from 1994. I retired in 2018. My meditation practice basically helped me survive my career as a set decorator, a ridiculously high-pressured environment, but one that everybody can figure out a way to cope and actually enjoy it. So I hope I can contribute something today. That's about it. Oh, queer, and but also I came out when I was 27 after I had 2 children. Divorced my wife, so I have grandchildren. I have full-grown adult children. I have a wonderful husband of 28 years. I feel incredibly blessed and privileged and fortunate to have seen our culture change as much as it has. And I hope you guys are going to keep making it change into the future. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Right now, I'm in Scotland doing a retreat, but talking about meditation. So this is amazing. All of you are amazing. So it's a big pleasure for me to be with all of you tonight. My name is Fabio. Let me introduce you. Who am I? I am Fabio. I'm a business coach and a speaker. Last week I was in Malta for a conference speaking about diversity and inclusion are one of my main topics, and I talk as well about mental health. And as a business coach, I work with entrepreneurs, especially with LGBTQ entrepreneurs here in UK. And I work with I'm a consultant for different organizations, how to deal with, for example, with the companies, how to deal with LGBTQ entrepreneurs, and do workshops on that topic as well. But I'm with the Start Out. I started 2 years ago as a mentor, and after I became a part of the programming board, and I love this organization because it's an organization especially that helps LGBTQ entrepreneurs, and we know how it's important, especially regarding the mental health, how if we look at the data, how we are affected. But let's start the night about, we have tonight a few questions that I'm going to ask to all the panelists, and let's have a nice conversation. Ask the questions with all of you. Who wants to start the conversation? It's okay, or I'm going to choose one of you. It's okay. Are you ready? Ready to go? The first question that we prepared for you tonight is this one. How do we stay fully present and engaged in an environment with high rates of change? I will repeat. How do we stay fully present and engaged in an environment with high rates of change? Who wants to start this amazing conversation on mental health? I would like to tell to all attendees that if you have any questions, please write it in the chat, and we will try to answer. Who wants to start this conversation? Okay, I'm going to choose Chris. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Just really quickly, I think I'll share what comes to mind for me about working in an environment where there's high rates of change is, frankly, that's going to be the norm in our current work environment. And I think when we look to next year with the uncertainty of the economy, it's probably just going to continue to be a little bit volatile. So what I always tell my clients is to just focus on what is in your control. So sometimes you have to kind of zoom out of the current situation, the current environment, and just notice that the ups and downs and the twists and turns are very much a normal part of business and what you can expect, especially as a founder. So I think it's sort of reframing your relationship with change to normalize like what's happening, and also to just then focus, what is it that I can actually have control over in this situation? Because I do think that founders can easily feel like they want to have an impact on everything and they want to move the ball forward in all these different areas that they don't necessarily have control over. So really, where can you have the most control, and what is within your control, and how can you sort of reframe and normalize change as part of the process.
Thank you so much. And with your experience, Chris, Wang?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can do. For me, what has been most helpful, I know it's different for everyone, is kind of reframing when a lot of things are changing, but reframing kind of the goal as, instead of being a specific outcome, which I think is kind of how we generally look at goals, but instead to be about learning or the process. I think I'm generally an optimist, but when things are changing a lot, I kind of try to see it as an opportunity to try things over and over again and start from scratch over and over again. An example is when we pivoted, our old model didn't work and we pivoted to a new model. And I think it took some work, but instead of looking at it as failure, we look at it as, okay, now we have a second chance to do everything better than the first time because we have all of the learnings from the first time. So taking that mindset of kind of, we're here to learn, we're here to do it better again. I get to be a second-time founder while being a first-time founder. For me, helps keep me kind of, I guess, present and motivated. But the second, I guess, smaller piece is just about, like, when things are changing, anchoring yourself to something that is less moving. So that could be your partner, it could be your meditation practice, it could be surfing for me, something that doesn't change as easily, and anchoring yourself to that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was, yeah, both answers really good. Thank you so much, both of you. And now, Gabriel, can you please tell us about what do you think about how can it change when there is the high rates, please?
Certainly. When people come into me spinning about this half an hour, it's so easy to be disengaged in a place where there's so many competing priorities, so much change, so much uncertainty. And one of the first things that I do is I always give them permission to slow down. Say, you don't have anything that you have to be doing in this hour. Like, just, I give them the actual permission to slow down. And I think that really helps, and is something that we incorporate into their day-to-day, is giving themselves permission to go a little slower, because things will change. They do change. So while you're going through that, I also want to echo what Chris and Chris said about finding a tether. So in all the changes, find something to tether to. Bonus points if it can be something that aligns with your values. So if you know what you really value and can tether to that to hold you through the changes, and permission to go a little slow. It's a little bit easier said than it is to actually do. But that's what I would work toward in those environments.
Thank you so much, Gabriel. That was great. And Tim, with your experience as well, I think you can share a lot about that.
Sure. It starts with knowing whether we're cranked up or upset, and our bodies are going to be the first thing that tells us that. So we want to pay attention to our breath when things feel overwhelming or changing at a rate we can't track. First, we need to reside in our body. So we just notice everything coming in the senses. And I would suggest you can do this anywhere. And we keep a questioning attitude. Basically, what is this? Because we'll often carry a story or a narrative about the plan or the overarching idea, and holding on to that story will keep us from noticing what's actually right in front of us. And there's always a situation that we're in that's immediate. There's always a specific relationship to that situation. And then there's always a specific function. So that always has to be taken care of first. And we won't see clearly to do that unless we're grounding ourselves just in the moment we're in, not wishing it was some other way, and not being distracted by future planning, and not being distracted by anything in the past that confuses us. And the last piece of it is, anybody who's trying is always making a mistake. Mistakes come with the territory, and always those are no problem. Mistakes are actually how we learn, and it's a little bit getting the habit of enjoying making a mistake and then correcting it as soon as it's been discovered, rather than going through some whole story about this. People do this stuff without making mistakes. Our whole life is a mistake, and we're just discovering how to make it what we want it to be, rooted in our values, rooted in our direction or our intention, rather than in some kind of confusion or story.
Thank you so much, Tim. I could call myself the king of mistakes. With all mistakes, maybe so many, the king or queen. So both of them, because honestly, really, you were so right. From my point of view, I can share that right now, what I'm living in the last 4 days, mindfulness. So that is one of the meditation that you can do, is to be with you can think about the now, the importance of the moment. So we always think about, as well, all of you said, so in the different ways, about the past, the future, but sometimes the importance is the now. Like right now, I'm living the experience with all of you and the people that are listening. So let's enjoy this moment. But as a society, we are obsessed about what can happen in the future. We don't know most of the times. You know what I mean? So this is and we create our. If you think about each one of us has a different, it's a different reality, and we create our reality. So how can we stay in a high rate of change, thinking about the now, the moment that we are living? And this is well, all of you teams said the mistakes. Chris with all her experience, and Chris, both Chris, they share the perception of this high rate change. And Gabriel as well, all of you said something so important about how people can move in the right direction when they are in this high rate of change, that hope that all our attendees can take some inspiration. But let's go to the second questions. Ready to go? Ready. The second question is, how do we manage competing priorities, unknowns, and distractions during the day in a way that supports our mental health? I'm going to repeat for all of you. 1, 2, 3. How do we manage competing priorities, unknowns, and distractions during the day in a way that supports our mental health? And now I'm going to ask Gabriel to start.
Such a good question. I would say put them down. If you can put them down, great, but organize them. So write it down. I think they tend to get out of control and feel out of control when they're stuck up here. It's nebulous ideas. So I'm a huge supporter of using sticky notes, of writing lists, whether you have to write in priorities. For instance, I'll even have people do the priority for today and just have one that you want to hit and ones that maybe fall here. And if it's something that you can't address right now, just put it in a whole different sticky note or list that's later. So when it's written down, you can put some of those things out of your mind and out of your worry, and really be able to hone your focus amongst competing priorities. So organize it in a way that 5 minutes that it takes to write everything down will save you hours in the long run of just wandering and being lost in this. So I would say write it down. The second part that I would say is for perfectionists, and I know a lot of us in here are really hard worker and maybe tend to be perfectionists if you're anything like people that I work with. And I would say the magical word to use is ish. So something doesn't have to be great, or it's just like great-ish or good-ish. It's good enough. Just add ish to anything, and that takes a lot of pressure off. Because in all likelihood, nothing has to be perfect, nor will it be perfect when you try. So just giving yourself permission to make it ish.
Yes, thank you so much, Gabriel. Perfectionism, we all know it's a big issue. Now I'm going to ask you to Chris Wang. Can you please tell us how do you manage your priorities, unknowns, and distraction during the day in a way that supports your mental health, Chris Wang?
Yeah, this is such a relevant question. It's kind of what most people come to ADHD coaching for. So I guess I have kind of two parts here. So I think more philosophically, or maybe I'm not sure if philosophically is the right word, but before even looking at priorities, or I think it's first figuring out which one actually is a priority. And I think that all comes down to knowing your values, your personal values that you've thought really hard about, because if you don't know what your values are, when something comes, an opportunity, do you say yes? Do you say no? A lot of us just say yes to everything, and you end up with 10,000 priorities. But knowing what you want to say no to and why, if you have your values or your North Star or your goals, whatever it is that is guiding you in being able to make these decisions, you could probably cut your list down by half. So that's on a more, I guess, high level. But of course, then what happens when you do have the list? There's a lot of kind of small tactics. I will just offer up a couple that we work with in ADHD coaching. One of them is time blocking, which I love. Picking a chunk of time in your day and saying, in these 2 hours, I'm going to do these 3 things. And so once you've declared that, if something else is not those 3 things, don't do it. Write it down if it's a distraction. Make contingency plans for things that you think are going to come up. And you know that at least you'll get done those 3 blocks or 3 items that you have to do. That's my favorite thing. And the second piece is accountability partners. If you have someone who you can say, in these 2 hours, in the beginning, you say, I'm going to do these 3 things. And at the end, you say, I did only 2 of the things. I didn't do 3 things. Just those 2 sentences can get you to do so much more, and also force you to focus on your priorities. Those are the 2 that I love the most. And then just as like a random third bonus one is just to be nice to yourself. Sometimes you won't work on the highest priority item. Sometimes you won't get everything that you want done. And that's okay, because we're all human.
Okay, be nice with yourself. Thank you so much. It's so important. It's so simple, but so important, so effective. Thank you. And Tim, how would you respond to that?
I lived by lists almost my whole life in production. And it was the way just to have everything down in front of me so something didn't get lost. And the priorities would make themselves evident once I made the list. So then I'd rearrange it, or I'd number, so I'd have 15 things, but right away there'd be 4 of them that needed to be 1, 2, 3, and 4. So they got assigned that as priorities, either because of timing or geography. Also, I found I couldn't think when I was sitting still. So I learned that there was a kinetic component to processing my own priorities. So the list would be movable. I'd have a notebook or something. I'd either move around the building, or I'd get in the car and start addressing the things at hand. And as I started addressing 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would become really clear and would make themselves apparent. So it would almost teach me what the immediate priorities were. Unknowns, typically we think of them as negative. If we can really strengthen the fact that we don't know a lot of what's going on, we don't know what's going to appear, that becomes an advantage, because we'll immediately spin into a catastrophe idea future, or spin into a failure future. And those are all imaginary. We can just return to, well, I don't actually know. I don't have the information yet, can't make that decision. There's not enough information in place to make that decision. So this don't know attitude actually becomes kind of freeing and more of a relief. It doesn't have to be a don't know that means a catastrophe. And distractions, you've just got to make friends with them, have tea for a minute, and then show them the back door. If we are really negative about a distraction, or we react to a distraction that comes at us from the outside, it takes up way more energy. So seeing distractions as, oh, that's just a distraction, this is standard. I want to return to what my priorities are. Oh, this is a distraction, that's standard. I want to return to my priorities. For me, that happens 10,000 times a day, really. Especially people who are entrepreneurs or are creative, you're basically cultivating a constant sensitivity to the environment. And a natural result of that sensitivity is you become distracted. So we've got to balance our sensitivity and our artistic perceptions with an ability to redirect and concentrate, just redirect and concentrate. And it happens over and over and over, simply because we're so busy these days. So lived by list, make an unknown your friend, only don't know, is a wonderful wisdom teaching from my teacher. And just make friends with distractions and then get back to the point.
Thank you so much, Tim. Make friends with distraction. Great. And now, Chris, can you tell us, Chris Rollins?
I love how you broke all that down, Tim, and distinguish between priorities, unknowns, and distractions. I'll share two quick things. One is a visual that I find really helpful just for the moments when you're feeling the overwhelm and you're feeling like, gosh, there's so much going on. I don't know where to focus. I'm not sure what takes priority. I am just sort of like feeling stuck. So the visual I like to use, people say the phrase, oh my gosh, I have so many balls in the air right now. So I think about like juggling all these balls, and some of them are actually rubber balls that if you drop them, they'll bounce back up. But some of those balls are actually like dinner plates. So if you drop those dinner plates, they might shatter. So of all the balls you have in the air, which ones are actually sort of resilient rubber balls that'll bounce back up if you choose to sort of let it go in the moment, and which of them are really more breakable, more fragile, that really need your attention right then and there. So just think about that visual for those moments. And then the second piece is really about energy management. And I think this was Seth Godin's exercise to think about what are your energy drains and what are your energy gains. And he thinks about them in 5 different categories. So the people, the places, the projects, the habits, and the thoughts in your life. Look at all of those and who are the people that give you energy and who are the people that drain your energy? What are the places, your office, a coffee shop, your family's house? What are the places that drain your energy and what are the places that feed you energy? So just think about, and what are the thoughts that you have? What thoughts are you perpetuating that are draining your energy, and how can you replace them with thoughts that are going to give you energy? So just take inventory of where you are with your energy, so that when you do come up to these moments where you have a lot going on, you're a little bit more streamlined and you're preparing yourself to handle the sort of taxing nature of being a founder and all of the demands that you're going to have on you.
Thank you so much, Chris, as well. All of you, oh my God, what I can say right now about your question after all of you were so amazing. And I feel like, oh, what can I add? But let me add something. Like from my point of view, okay, the list, before that I was an entrepreneur, I was an event planner. Okay, so if you're an event planner, you have to be organized. And so there you have to know, there I learned, because I was not the kind of person to know very well the priorities before that experience. But after, when I became with my own company, there I had to really understand to be structured and to prioritize what was the main goal every day. What is the goal of the day? That was the most important aspect. Regarding the unknown, as all of you say that I love it, we have to be more courageous. Okay, it is such a word that all people say, let's be courageous. What does it really mean, courageous? To do uncomfortable things, because be comfortable is too nice. Okay, we are talking when we do uncomfortable thing. Let me tell you about my experience. I became speaker. It was not my cup of tea. Okay, when I joined years ago an organization, I don't know if you know Toastmasters, but it's a public speaking organization. I joined there, and there I found this passion to speak, to connect with the people, and to be courageous because I hated my English. Okay, that is the word that I shouldn't use, but at the time, that was my enemy. After I understood that I could make fun when I was speaking, I was enjoying the moment, and there I said, okay, look, the courage that you can utilize in your favor as well. Something that for you it's negative, you can change in positive. So let me utilize this accent and this flamboyant aspect of me. That was hilarious. So there was something that I did it, and I think the message tonight would be, let's be more uncomfortable. And about the distractions, oh my God, I have so many distractions all the time. And let's be honest, the first distractions are social networks, Instagram, TikTok, all of them. They always do tun, 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 and we are obsessed with all of that. I'm trying, for example, I'm here, you are only positive, amazing distraction of this retreat, but I try this retreat to say no Wi-Fi, no, and of course, no, no display that I'm having this amazing conversation with all of you. But that was my thing. I say, Fabio, no emails, only the important one. I give myself 30 minutes. So give myself that time, and as well with the social networks. So give the time about this distraction. Like you can say, okay, well, during the day I'm going to check Instagram, TikTok. That sometimes they're not really, really important, let's be honest, for a short time. Now we are going for the third questions. I hope that all of you are ready for this great question, that is, what are the most important shifts that business can make to support mental health in the workplace? I'm going to repeat. What are the most important shifts that business can make to support mental health in the workplace? This question is really, really important. So I want to start with Chris Wang. Please, can you tell us what do you think about that? Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'll talk about it from, I guess, a startup or small team perspective. So I think that I've seen this in action as both kind of a leader and someone who's just worked at a different company. But it's definitely fostering like a true culture of vulnerability. That word is harder than it needs to say. But to give people a non-judgmental space at every single level. And I think it can sound cliche because I think a lot of people say, or companies say it, but for me, it's all about seeing it embodied at every level, and especially at the leadership level. And the example that really impacted me was when I worked at my last consulting firm. Our managing director, like the top managing director, she would always openly cry. She would cry if things were happy. She would cry if she was hurt, if she would cry if she was growing through change. And for me, that was a massive demonstration of like trust in us, her being vulnerable. And a lot of people see it as weakness, but for me, I saw it as strength that she was willing to do that. And that gave a massive invitation for my feelings, for me to express what is on my mind. And then which eventually with that trust yields to other things like people being able to ask for the accommodations that they need, people being able to talk to you if something is going on so that you're not too hard on them when something is falling apart at home. And without knowing, the first step of knowing these things, you can't actually do anything about it. And that's when a lot of miscommunications happen. That's when work ends up being an extra burnout on top of everything else that they're dealing with. And so I think that needs to be demonstrated at every level. And I think especially in places where a certain population or community isn't represented, like if you have a leadership full of men and they don't want to cry and the females don't feel like they can, or whether it's queer or Asian or whatever, when people see people like themselves or are given permission to be themselves, then that's when they can actually do it. And demonstration is the best way to do it, rather than just saying it, which I think is what a lot of companies do.
Thank you so much. And now, Tim, what do you think about that? What are the most important shifts that business can make to support mental health in the workplace?
Well, everything Chris Wang just said, I think, is spot on. I always made it a point to manifest what I wanted to see in other people. I would act it out myself. So I'd function as a cheerleader. I was always encouraging. When things went south, when things go terribly wrong, when we unpack what went wrong, it was never to assign blame or fault. It was to untangle it, because it's always a group of things that caused a thing to go south. It was never a particular, it may be one single thing shows you that it's gone wrong. But when you unpack it to prevent it from happening again, it's always a network of things that all lined up for it to go wrong. So I repeatedly kept saying, we're not interested in finding fault. We're just interested in finding the whole cause so that we can just make sure it doesn't happen again. The vulnerability, I think, is really important. I tried to crew up my department with as many diverse component people as I could. Sometimes there was a lot of diversity in the department, sometimes no diversity in the department. But I did the best to mix that up, because when you have the diversity, you get a much richer experience. I always made a safe place for people to express themselves. I always encouraged a difference of opinion and also allowed differences of opinion and views. And everyone felt respected, even though there were such different points of view. And then finally, conflict almost always arose because of change, because of things changing and communication not catching up with the change. However everyone thinks, the conflict is this particular person or that particular person. So I had to always remind people, when untangling a conflict, it's not the individuals. All of the individuals are working in the same direction. The conflict has arisen because the change, the level of change, got faster than the level of communication. And it took everybody's defensiveness down a few notches, and their willingness to solve the problem would come forward once they weren't as defensive or protecting their turf or their point of view.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. And now, Chris Rollins, can you tell us, please?
Yeah, these are all great. The word that's coming to mind is psychological safety. Tim talked about creating safe teams. Chris talked about vulnerability. The research from Amy Edmondson, who's one of the leading researchers and authors on this topic, she talks a lot about bringing 3 qualities in your leadership, which are empathy, humility, and curiosity. So what I'm really passionate about and seeing businesses change in the future, looking to next year, is how can we scale those qualities across a business and across your leadership. And when you actually think about what a coach brings, it's a lot of empathy, it's a lot of humility, it's a lot of curiosity. So short of hiring coaches, what I'm really passionate about is building an organization with leaders who have really strong coaching skills, who know how to hold a conversation with their staff. Because I think every interaction, every conversation within an organization can have a huge ripple effect outside of that one meeting, outside of that one room or Zoom call. And so when you think about building a culture of psychological safety, it really goes back to the conversations we're having and how we're showing up to those conversations. So how can you show up to those conversations as a leader with empathy, humility, and curiosity? And I think one of the ways we do that is to train leaders and managers to be more skilled coaches in their work as well.
Thank you so much, Chris. And now, Gabriel, please, can you tell us?
Yes, everything. And the word that comes to mind for me, psychology term, is normalizing, right? So allowing others, letting somebody know that others are also going through this. And we all have mental health needs. So at the level of leadership is great because there's so much visibility, but normalizing mental health is a priority. So even like Chris is doing, showing up today, right? Taking time out to show, wait, mental health is a priority. And doing visibility that way. And I would also say that even if you're an employee, you taking time off for mental health or to take care of your own needs is also a great way to normalize for your coworkers and for everybody else. That's kind of how it starts, is they see somebody else doing this because it's important. I do this with my patients all the time. You know, I'm should be on call for them 24/7, 52 hours a week, but I'm also a human. So I normalize it and say, you know what? I need, I'm taking the next 2 days for myself. I'm sorry, or not, I'm sorry, but whatever this means for you. And just starting to normalize that can really help individuals as well as begin to affect the culture.
Thank you, all of you. Again, it's so difficult, but I'm going to share more from me. That what is the main word is diversity and inclusion. So for me, it's all about how a company can do it, doing workshops, doing trainings. I was in a conference on iGaming, okay? Really difficult sector. It is really, he had in front of me 300 people, and I was talking about most of them, how important is diversity, inclusion, but I always share my equation, that is diversity plus equality plus inclusion equal belonging. We all need to belong to, especially if you work for a company, you have to belong to the company. You have to have this feeling. First of all, belong part is a human need. We all know that it's part of, it's a priority need. If you don't have that need, you don't work well. When I'm a consultant with company and I talk with employees, one of the first things with the feedback, so when I talk with them, it's they want to be themselves. That they want to show their aspect. I was working with a client that he had this issue, that he was CFO, really important finance corporation in London, okay? And he had this issue. He couldn't be himself. He couldn't share this part of his life. And he was feeling really, his performance was really bad, because when you are not yourself, you are not authentic, people don't want to utilize this word, but I love that word, authenticity. Your performance is not good. After we worked on that aspect, how he can be finally with the small steps, be himself, and can show his partner to his company. But the companies, when I do as well, I do workshop on authenticity, that how you can be yourself in a workplace, how can people finally share, not you share your life, but as well, we know how important is the language that you should utilize in the companies. And that is something that, diversity and inclusion is so is crucial. And for example, in UK, the discrimination cost 127 billion, and the company spent only 7 billion. So, and there is a lot of work to do it. They all are based on recruitment. Recruitment is not enough. You have to do. There is a lot of work. But I'm going to finish with my quote: "Authenticity is not the best way; it's the only way." Now we are going to see if there are any questions about some questions that people would like to share. Do we have any questions? Let me see if with that is my laptop. That. Let me see. What crossroad? Okay, this is a question for all the panelists, please. What crossroads or gaps do you see mental health startups and founders should be addressing? So I repeated the questions. What crossroads or gaps do you see mental health startups and founders should be addressing? Who wants to say something about that? Who starts? Team.
This was, I'm a little stumped on this, frankly, because I don't know that landscape of starting something new. So let me pass on answering that for now.
Okay, if you want Gabriel, Chris, the other Chris, who wants to say something about that? Let's have the conversation, all of us, about these last questions. Without, like, you know, what do we think? For example, for me, let me read the Chris, you want to say something?
I can go, but if you have something to say,
No, go. You can start.
Yeah, I think about this a lot because it's a massive problem, and it's also really hard to be a startup that needs to make money. I think there's a big dichotomy in the middle of that. I personally, if ideally they were perfectly aligned, but I think the biggest challenge is actually that there's so many solutions and there's so many, the science for everything is out there, but it's just not being disseminated properly. It's not being adopted. People don't have the cultural, there's a lot of cultural barriers, and there's a lot of stigma that's related that is just blocking people from actually using the things that they need to be using. And then there's a whole host of challenges with just how society currently is, with all of the distractions and all of the everything that we know, and the pace and the everything. So for me, I personally think the biggest challenge is actually just that a startup could solve is around accessibility, is around getting things to the right people at the right time. It's about the actual distribution of it I think on like a medium level, but I think there is always this whole systemic level of there's a lot of crossroads where we kind of went wrong, and over time, and this is the whole debate around the pandemic as well. It's like the pandemic kind of helped us come back to certain things that made us human and fixed a little bit, created a lot of other issues. But I guess all is to say I'm a little bit scattered right now. I think to come back to the question, I think for me, it's around accessibility, it's around awareness and reducing stigma and barriers. And I think startups are one way to solve it, but there's also tons of amazing nonprofits and movements and service providers and frontline workers and everything that just needs to work together to try to get this to actually in the hands of people who need it the most, and especially the people who need it the most.
Yeah, you're so right. Awareness is so important. Awareness, and with the startup, you really start from. It's not easy, as you said, but it's so important about that. But Gabriel and Chris, do you want to say something? How do you want some words about these questions? We have only 2 minutes, so before we finish this, I hope this is a really helpful night for all of you. That is powerful night. Well, Chris.
Nothing to add to that specific topic, but just to kind of wrap it up, I'll just say a thought that's been coming to me throughout this time, and I think you alluded to it, Fabio, is how mental health and creating more diverse and equitable and inclusive workplaces are very much interlinked, and maybe that's part of like the awareness that needs to be developed. But I see that as an opportunity to be thinking about mental health through the lens of creating more diverse and equitable and inclusive workplaces, because I think if people are feeling like they don't belong, they're not treated fairly, and all of that has a really outsized impact on their mental health.
Thank you so much. And Gabriel, do you want to say something? No, but I think the question was right. I think with the other question that we were talking tonight, all of you, what you said about sharing your experience and your knowledge was really good about what we all can learn about how we can what kind of strategies we can adopt with mental health in the workplace. So I would like to say a big thank you to all of you, to Gabriel, to Tim, to Chris Wang, to Chris Rollins, and especially Danny, that he helped all of us tonight to working with Zoom. And I would like a big thank you from my bottom heart to start out. To all of you, it was an amazing night. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. Bye. Have a lovely night. Bye-bye.